Hello, everybody. Welcome to a British Audiophile. I'm delighted to welcome you to another one of my podcasts. And we have Brian Mitchell, founder of Ecoustics, back here again. So thank you for coming on, Brian.
Thank you, Taryn. I'm grateful to be here. Honored to be back and on your channel. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, great. I wanted to talk to you actually because I wanted to discuss. We've been in COVID almost now for 2 years, and I regularly speak to manufacturers about the implications that it's had in terms of getting products in for review. And there's sometimes wider conversations that I pick up on or threads that I pick up on. And you've been in this business for, over 20 years and have all kinds of contacts with manufacturers. So I was really keen to kind of get your perspective on things.
Well, yeah, thank you.
And
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, I was just saying, just in terms of what COVID has, what implications COVID has had, and what the lasting effects of it are going to be. I've got a couple of conversations that I've had that I think were quite illuminating. So I just wanted to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, the real bottom line on a few things is prices are going up. And that's a combination of inflation, increased freight costs, harder to get parts, so supply and demand. Those are kind of the three key points that I've heard from different manufacturers, and some of them are better positioned than others. And have you heard some of the same, or what's different in the UK?
Yeah, so similar. I mean, I think it's not just obviously the hi-fi industry, but industry in general have had all kinds of issues with getting hold of parts and supply chain issues. That's delayed production. I think the other thing is that demand has been pretty strong for most brands. They've had kind of bumper years because people are spending more time at home. So it's a combination of the fact that the sales figures are pretty good, but they're struggling to get parts out. That's fairly well probably understood. And beyond that, they've been struggling with getting their products out of China. So the shipping costs, I think one manufacturer said it went from 1,000 to I think 13. Another said up to £18,000 to get the same. So it's 18-fold. And there's regularly issues with the time it's been taken to get stuff. It's been stuck at ports for months, and they just can't get the stuff. And they've got dealers screaming, customers screaming for products.
Yep.
And that has an implication on sometimes from a reviewer's perspective, how, if they've got a whole load of customers waiting for long periods of time for products, then, your review sample gets knocked back a bit, and they say, well, we can't supply you anything for a little while. So I don't know how it's been for you.
Yeah, in terms of getting reviews, I mean, there's such a wide variety of stuff that can come in. So we haven't had lack of products to review. It's really just the next upgrade cycle that's getting delayed for a lot of companies. I know on the home theater receiver line, they generally come out every year, and it seems like there's a 6-month to 8-month delay now on when the 2021 models are coming out very late in the year. I expect to see that across the board for other electronics parts that are probably stuck in supply chain issues. So there's definitely a delay in getting new products. Prices tend to be on the rise. So if you can get something and the cost of shipping to you is low right now, I'd go ahead and jump on it because those prices may not stand. I've seen prices go up 20, 30% on the same product just in the last 6 months. And at the end of the day, the manufacturers have to make money, and they can't sell at a loss for an extended period of time. So maybe in the short term, they're trying to get rid of some older inventory. Jump on those deals right now, I would say, if you can. And I think you talked about it last time in your podcast with Siddharth about how he could get the KEF wireless. LS50s. I forget the model number.
Yeah.
At about 50% off.
Wireless.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, those are some of the deals you may want to be looking for as a consumer out there. The kind of year or two older model that's really truly not that outdated, still very good. That's what I'd be advising consumers right now is to look for some of those deals.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the shipping costs have obviously been a big factor in terms of costs going up, and it doesn't seem to be coming down. And the thing is, I suspect after a little while it becomes the new norm. So yes, of course,
Hmm.
as availability and stuff, and we get out at the other end of this, I can imagine shipping costs coming down, but not to the levels they were pre-COVID, because the shipping companies know they can get away with charging more, and people still have to have their product. So it'd be interesting to see where that settles down. I don't know what, if you have a perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of it is the cost of shipping. I guess there's the cost of shipping to the manufacturer and the supply chain, but then the cost of the cost of shipping to the customer. Can companies sustain pricing with free shipping? Because that's become a norm here in the US, where everybody expects free shipping on everything, or they don't buy it. Pretty much, it's like if you can't get free
Right.
shipping, although
Yeah.
although they can just build it into the price, just the
Yeah.
psychological idea of free shipping has just taken a stranglehold on the consumer here, and people just expect it. So, is that the same in UK? Do you get free shipping?
No, I think we've got some companies that do the direct sale model. So the two brands that come to mind are IOTA VX and Bucart, who have been very well reviewed on YouTube, and they ship pretty much free around the world with trial periods. And I know China Hi-Fi with some of their products include that free shipping, but it's not the norm. It's not something that I think we're a little bit behind. We still tend to rely on our established dealer networks and distributor routes, and the direct sales model isn't the norm in terms of how people acquire their hi-fi products here in the UK. It might be different, like I say, in the States.
Yeah, there's definitely more direct companies, I think, in the U.S. or the direct to consumer brands. I'm curious why it's not that way in London, like big metropolitan city. They should be able to deliver um, quickly
Yeah,
and efficiently. So I don't know. I
I think
guess
I think it's
yeah,
just that I think us consumers are still, we're not still so comfortable with. I think you're a bit further behind in that cycle. It kind of
right,
catches on in the States, and then it takes another 2, 3 years. Manufacturers regularly tell me in the UK manufacturers we're always about 2, 3 years behind whatever they're doing in the States. We kind of finally cotton on to that about a couple of years down the line here. That's probably a little bit unfair, but
right.
it's not far from the truth. So we just haven't. I think it will go down the route of a lot more direct sales because there aren't that many dealers around, and it's not that convenient always to get to demo the equipment that you want to demo. You might have to go to 3 different dealers to demo 3 different products, and so I think it will eventually go a lot more down the direct sales route, but we haven't. I don't think we've quite got there yet here in the UK, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that with the advent of the internet over the last 20 something years, everything should have shifted faster to a direct model. But I mean, many other industries have, but the hi-fi
Yeah,
industry has been one of the slower ones um, go direct. Like if you look at a company like Sound United, which owns 10 brands, I believe, they just started doing direct sales this year, probably because they were forced to um, through COVID. But some of those brands people have heard of: Polk Audio, Denon, Marantz, Class A, um, Definitive Technology. A lot of the larger brands. Now you can buy that direct, and a lot of times it comes with free shipping, at least in the US. I'm not sure about the rest of the
yeah,
world. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I think your point about how do you demo stuff, that's
mm,
another problem going forward. Because the best way to demo it may be in your home, and does the seller, do they offer a trial period? Can you send it back if you don't like it? What are those kind of policies? And that's something that a few of the brands here that do direct selling, I think SVS gives you that option. Aperion Audio, I think, gives you that option. A lot of the companies that do direct selling are kind of forced to do that, and they're doing it under the assumption that once you try it, you're going to get used to it and you're going to keep it. And they aren't doing it on the assumption that the customer is going to buy 5 different brands at the same time and return 4. And if people start doing that, then the industry will probably have to shift. But that's certainly part of the change of how do you sell direct. And go ahead.
You said that there's certain companies are better positioned than others to deal with what the changes or the challenges they face. So what do you mean in terms of whose position?
Okay,
well, we don't need to name names. But,
if you have manufacturing in the U.S., you're better positioned. I know everyone's familiar with the Macintosh brand. Our editor-in-chief, Ian White, just visited their factory in Binghamton, New York, and it's like an unbelievable operation that once you see how things are built, although they're very expensive products, you can appreciate paying for it a little more. And I think there'll be an article that'll come out that'll kind of coincide with this podcast, so people can look for that. But Macintosh does, for the most part, I think, most of their manufacturing in the U.S. And surprisingly, even for a luxury brand, they've had incredible sales numbers, like their best ever. And so they're one of the companies that they don't sell direct. They still use the the dealer model. And they've done surprisingly well through COVID, through their established dealer base. But they were also able to make products during that time. And I guess that's part of the struggle. Could you as a company produce products when your factory was shut down for whatever period of time, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months? So that's also part of the challenges going forward.
I've got there's at least a good handful of companies that I've spoken to that had products that were stuck in ports coming out of China. I think one port shut down completely, didn't it, in lockdown for months and months, and they had so they were really struggling to get any orders fulfilled. And I've had at least 2 conversations over the last few months where there's manufacturers have looked at that and thought, well, actually look at how much control we have over this going forward, and they're planning to shift some of their production, certainly their higher tier products, back to the domestic market. So in these cases, they were UK brands. So it's quite interesting. That's going to be a legacy of perhaps COVID. Is they're sitting there thinking, well, actually, we don't need to necessarily have everything made in China. Right. There's certain ranges that we can have made here, and others the other kind of more accessible stuff will get built in China.
Right. I mean, it's also changed how the engineering and the collaboration gets done. Obviously, you need people to build stuff, but the engineers have been working remotely and figuring out different technologies, I guess computer simulations, and there's different ways of experimenting remotely. And I guess that's part of the innovation that companies have had to figure out is how to work remotely, when to manufacture in China, when to manufacture in the U.S. And I think that really depends. Are you a new company? Are you an established company? And it's not an easy business. This is really
No.
what it comes down to. It's like you think you can just make the best quality stuff and everybody will find it and buy it, but
Yeah.
there's marketing plays a huge role in the perception of things beyond sound quality. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think yeah. There's companies that have done quite well. New companies seem to be much more favourable towards YouTube and the YouTube space. The more traditional brands seem to want to stick with the traditional publications. So that's something that I think is going to change and take some time to change. So new companies, I think they realise that actually, if they're going to get their name out there, one of the best way to get your name out is to send it to all the YouTube reviewers, because if you send it across, if you pick the top 10 YouTube reviewers, you're going to get massive
Mm-hmm.
coverage. And
Yep.
but here in Britain, I've spoken about it before. The old British
Right.
companies, that they still haven't cottoned on to what YouTube is and what it does. But it was just, yeah, I was kind of, it's interesting that you say that, yeah. So those who are positioned, who've got some manufacturing in the US, have kind of done well. So I think that might be one of the legacies of this COVID, is that we see a lot more stuff produced,
Locally. Right.
domestically. Yeah, yeah. We seem to. It seems globalization has been fantastic in lots of ways, but I wonder if it's we've seen the kind of peak of it, and it's going to start pulling back a little bit post COVID.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Don't know
certainly
what.
likely. The other part of it the is pretty much how the shows had been shut down during COVID, and how um, I've been questioning during this time, what's the purpose of hi-fi shows? And because the industry did the best it's ever done without any hi-fi shows. So if you were to think about, do we want to keep having them? But obviously, there's a lot of other complicating factors there. But it's like, what's the value? And the value typically has been to find dealers for your products. It's really a B2B thing. I would like to see
Okay.
shows be a B2C, a consumer thing, where people, because of all of the specialty retailers that have shut down, how can consumers discover new products? And shows are a good way
Yeah.
to pull that together. And
Yeah.
so that's what I would like to see, is more consumer oriented shows, and maybe that's something. But obviously, like you said, YouTube is where everybody is searching right now for information, advice. That's why I'm grateful to be on your channel and just to talk to you, because yeah, um,
Well, it's
yeah.
always great to have you here. Anyway.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so you think the shows will change going forward,
I
or
don't
what
know
do you
if they'll
think? That they're
change.
just.
I would like to
Mm,
think there can be some innovative companies that can come up with different ways of doing shows. I think the older
yeah.
way has supported the dealer network, and with fewer and fewer dealers, um,
Yeah.
how do you, yeah, how does that work out? It's really a question to me, is how do consumers discover hi-fi, high-end audio? That's what I think
Yeah.
about, and that's what our website is geared towards. How can we reach the next generation of consumers out
Yeah.
there that that want to get into this stuff? And your channel
Yeah.
does that, and a lot of people on YouTube do that, and we're trying to do that on the print side. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's part of the challenge of this COVID
I think
era.
I think the thing is also that, depending on where you are in the world, but generally in the UK, I think it's even more so in the US, perhaps not in other places in Europe. The demographic of people in the shows is generally
Mm,
middle-aged men.
yep.
That's predominantly what you see. There's nothing wrong. I'm a middle-aged man myself,
Right.
so I put myself amongst that. But so, and I think the headphone community has been pretty good in terms of some of their shows, in terms of getting a wider demographic. And I think certainly Munich, I think, is from more reputation, much better, much more family orientated. But there's perhaps things that can be done to widen the appeal of shows beyond kind of men in their middle-aged men, I suppose, which is what they predominantly, which is predominantly 90% of what you see at the shows.
Yes, unfortunately, yeah, that is what you see. They essentially, the shows need to be cooler. Like cooler will attract women, and I don't know, different type of celebrities should be at these shows. It shouldn't just be about the establishment, which is generally older. Like you said, the older magazines are now run by even older people than previously. So that's that is some of the changes I've seen. But in terms of products, I think you would agree that products are getting better, and less.
Yeah.
Although the prices are going up, they are becoming more accessible. Hopefully, that will stay.
Well, I think on that, I think that's quite interesting. I think some of the Chinese companies that were, it's the same thing that Japanese brands went through probably 30, in the 80s. But some of the Chinese companies that were positioned at products that were typically around 100, 200, 300 pounds, SMSL and Topping are the ones that come to mind. They're pretty well established in terms of their DACs, and headphone products. And I've seen, it seems to be, I don't know if there's no evidence, but that's kind of just what I observe, that their focus seems to be shifting more towards products in the 500 to £1,000 range. So as they become established, they're not necessarily so focused on renewing their more accessible products, and that's that wasn't a space that they were known for occupying 5-6 years ago. So I wonder whether another legacy of this will be that costs have gone up across the board, but even the value orientated Chinese brands, we can see that there's a lot of very good stuff that isn't necessarily always about being very accessible. At higher price points coming through from those brands now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up an interesting point there is, will the Chinese companies take out some of the challenger U.S. companies because they can, for whatever reason, cost efficiencies. But I think you've seen a rise in brands from China. Would you agree with that?
What do you mean by rise, sir?
I guess more products, more products that are challenging with quality. I guess that's really the key word, is that there's more quality Chinese brands coming up that people haven't heard of their brand name yet. For people from your channel, they'll know of Topping and SMSL, but ask anyone on the street, have they ever heard of those brands, and they won't know what you're talking about. So, but yeah, there hasn't been any rise to that level. But there's been a lot of knockoff. I guess I don't want to use the word knockoff, but that's a little demeaning term. But less expensive ways of building stuff or selling stuff.
Yeah, I think like I say, I see it similar to what Japanese manufacturers went through, actually before my time in Hi-Fi when I was just a young boy. But I can see there's a lot of very good stuff coming through from China that isn't. I think Auralic led the way with their streamers. They're not. I think the cheapest streamer that Auralic do now is £1,800. Then you've got Hollow Audio and Denafrips. Now they both have. I think Hollow Audio's Spring 3 is their entry point at the moment, and that's a couple of £1,000 plus, a little bit more than that perhaps. And Denafrips have one product below £1,900, which is the Aries DAC, but it's a big jump up to the rest of their range. So they're not, it's not what you call accessible, hi-fi, and they have got nothing to. They're not worried about their brand image compared to the establishment, because they've built up a very good brand image. And
Right.
SMSL and Topping, I see them gearing up more towards the kind of middle space where that 500 to £1,000 space. I can see, and the products that they have at the kind of more accessible price points at around 100, £200. They don't seem to be getting renewed so often as the ones further up the range. So,
right. I think, yeah.
So are we at? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Cool.
Go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
So I'm wondering, are we getting to the end of that period where we're going to see a lot of very accessible, very affordable products coming from China? Or they've realised that actually they now established and they can charge a bit more and have products a little bit more higher up the range?
I don't know. I would say competition will continue to provide lower price competition. Like if you leave too much room in your profit margin or your pricing structure, then someone's going to come in and try to do it a little cheaper and a little better, and that's just the nature of competition. So I wouldn't say that's the reason. I wouldn't say that's the reason that we won't see lower price stuff. It's kind of the inflation and freight costs and the other issues that we brought up earlier that's going to increase prices. But if everything rises together, it's theoretically not an increase in pricing if your income goes up at the same time. That's that's just the definition of inflation. I don't think I surprised anybody there, but
no, yeah. I think it's not just the hi-fi industry, is it? It's across the board, like I say. And I think maybe you're right. And I think you're absolutely right. I think if SMSL and Topping are now established and they're going to focus a little bit on their higher tier products, then someone else will occupy that space that they were in 4 or 5 years ago. So I can see that happening. But I thought it was just interesting to see what the legacy of this long-term, this COVID will be, and get your insights as to what challenges manufacturers have faced over the last couple of years.
Well, I mean, the other thing you have to remember is things go in cycles. Like, this is not a permanent situation of supply chain freight costs problem. Like, there'll be an oversupply in a couple of years of parts and things, and then prices will drop. So depending, but I mean that's some of the things that you can look towards in 2 or 3 years. There should be an oversupply at some point, and then how did companies adapt during that time? What did they do with their online selling? What did they do with their dealer network? Are they doing branded stores? I know Name Focal now is starting their own branded stores, so that's another trend. It could be a trend. They're the only one that I know of right now that are going essentially the branded store model, kind of like what Apple does, where they sell online, but they have their own branded stores, and people can get service through that. And there's some advantage to dealing with the company directly as opposed to a dealer. But do you have any thoughts? Have you looked into what they're doing?
No, not really. Ian mentioned it in the podcast that I did with him, and I thought it was quite interesting because I made the comparison with Bang & Olufsen, which I think was different here in the UK, because Bang & Olufsen we used to see in kind of nice high streets, but he said in the US they positioned themselves in malls where perhaps they didn't get the footfall that they wanted for the kind of brand that they were, and they had Bose down the road. And people looked at the Bang & Olufsen at 10 times the price of the Bose, and then probably drove more traffic to Bose than it did to Bang & Olufsen. But I haven't really looked into that business model, but it's a lot of money, obviously, to go your own route with stores. I know from the motor industry that there's certain brands that have gone through those cycles of having dealer networks and then basically selling direct themselves, basically buying the dealers back off
Right.
off franchise dealers and taking it themselves. So
Right.
that was the case when I was working at Porsche. But I think they can only do it where you've got large. They only did it with Porsche only did it with their very large dealerships. So they were in and around London. So I should imagine that if you're going to do that, you could probably do one in London and a few places, and Manchester here in the UK, and
Right.
those areas where you're going to get quite a large pull of people from the surrounding area. But I can't. Where I am up here in the middle of nowhere, I can't see my local town having a what is it, Focal powered by name store. So
Right.
you know.
Right. Yeah. You typically need to be in a large metropolitan area for those to make sense. But I think Apple has proven that model to be so successful that I think they're the highest cost per square foot retailer in the world. I mean, that's crazy to think about how much they sell. But of course, I mean, their products are at their products, their marketing. I mean, it's at a whole level that every company I think is striving for. Is how do you get the brand image that Apple has been able to generate, backed up by the quality of products and service and customer satisfaction over time. I mean, that's pretty much what every company is striving for. But yeah, it's I think it's interesting. Are there big differences in UK, US hi-fi? I think we're seeing they're very similar challenges, is what I'm gathering from you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in a position to be able to tell you really, but I think so. I think I mean, I think it was I think we've had it as good as we've ever had it in the last 10 years or so in hi-fi. It's been fantastic, and I was just curious as to your perspective as to whether there was going to be any lasting hangover from COVID. But like you say, I think prices will rise, and hopefully, if these issues do resolve themselves relatively soon, then hopefully they may come back down a bit, or. So, like I say, things do tend to go around in cycles. But I wasn't sure. I wanted to get your.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm glad to kind of tell you what I know so far. But yeah, grateful to be here and to have this conversation with you. Honored to be on your podcast. Yep. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. What are you, just before we finish up, what are you up to? So what's been happening in Ecoustics?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So we should have another podcast. We'll be up to number 11 on our audio podcast coming out this week. So look for one of those to drop. Otherwise, we are pumping out articles every week. And our big announcement coming, I'm hoping next week, is we are launching a YouTube video series on our Acoustics channel in partnership with Emiko. She's also known as That Hi-Fi Girl on Instagram. She'll be entertaining some of you on the Acoustics YouTube channel, and we're trying to make her videos one probably every 2 weeks right now to start out. But other than seeing me on the channel, which you may see more of me, definitely look for her and the Acoustics YouTube channel as we start to grow that. So thank you for that, Taryn.
So you've got the YouTube bug now, see? So I broke your duck with you coming on here, and now see, no stopping you now. There you go.
Yeah, you got me on YouTube for the first time. Yep, you got me on YouTube for the first time. Thank you for that. It's always fun to talk with you. I love your channel. Like, you have some of the most interesting insights and in-depth details when you do your reviews. So continue to do what you're doing and keep it up.
Yeah. We'll chat again soon. So
thank
you, viewers, for thank you, Brian, for agreeing to come on. I'd like to say, and I was just it was just a topic I thought now that was interesting to explore. And thank you, viewers, for watching. I'll see you in the next podcast and the next review soon. Take care. Bye.